Hey,
How's it going?
good buddy, good. Really good. Thanks for coming by, Alchemist.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. It's awesome to talk about this kind of stuff. So,
It's cool. It's weird to go. I watch a lot of podcasts, and I was actually chatting about I enjoy the production of things, whether it's YouTube content or other kind of creative works. And one day, my girlfriend, she said, "You should do a podcast," and I was like, "What am I going to do a podcast about?" She's like, "All you do is tell stories all the time about video games and interesting things. Find other people that want to talk about it." And I went, "That's a great idea." And then she was like, "That's a good idea you've just had." And I was like, "Oh, she's the best." So, Law Stories, that's the current working title. We don't know if we'll stick with it, but that's what we're doing. Ultimately, I'm a nerd. I love video games. I like writing. I've published a little bit of fiction work, play board games. I've got magic cards over there. I own a telescope. I like astronomy. And I thought what would be super cool is chatting with other people who also love interesting things and seeing how that goes and how we can get people involved, and hopefully other people in the internet will also find these things interesting, and
Yeah.
we'll sort of see how we go. So over to you. Take it away. The whole thing's yours.
fantastic.
Yeah,
All right.
from
Well,
the top.
first of all, with my nerd qualifications, I have my hand drawn D&D map of one of my campaign maps, and then I have a scientific tapestry of Pokemon from the Johto region. So.
That's good. Look, I'm looking at it being like, oh yeah, cool. He's into sea life. It's like, no, that's a Pokemon thing. Cool.
Yeah, you got your Mantine, your Corsola. It's fine. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
You're like, here are my
I also
qualifications.
have-
Like, I'm going to write this down.
yeah. I also have a huge board game collection, but that's in another room. So.
You've got a gaming room.
Sorry, it's a gaming / living room. It's I'll just kind of smush it into. It's just on a bookshelf over
All right,
there.
yeah. So
It's,
you don't have a living room. You live in
Yeah,
your
it's-
gaming
yeah.
room. Yeah. Is it very tidy? Would you say it's the cleanest room in your house?
I mean, it can be depending on.
Yeah.
If-
How long it's been since you've gamed?
Well, depending on if we're panic cleaning before people are coming over.
Oh, sure. Like there's an inspection or the in-laws
Right.
are coming over. Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. So super quick, I'm just going to lean on this because I think it's interesting, and
Yeah,
it's my
yeah.
podcast, so other people need to think it's interesting. It's a requirement. You're also a scientist, so
Yes,
docs-free
yes.
zone, credit card numbers, postal addresses, don't tell anyone. What kind of science do you do?
So, I have kind of I'm kind of a weird jack of all trades when it comes to chemistry and biology. I've worked in a lot of random fields.
I love that that's an option. That's the video game response too. What did you study? Science. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so my actual degree is in chemistry. But I've worked in random
Username checks out.
things. Yeah. But so I have worked in environmental sciences, like geochemistry, kind of stuff like that, doing environmental work and kind of looking at stuff like that. We already did stuff on like heavy metal things in river water and stuff of that, and we also did some microplastic studies. I'm not sure if you can hear my cat, but she's very vocal this morning.
We can.
as
I'm
well.
going to look forward to editing the cat in later with
Fantastic. Here.
little meows on the
Here,
screen.
you can come up.
My door's closed, so the cats can't get in.
Yeah, well, I made the mistake of leaving it cracked open.
Yeah,
So now she's in. It's just...
I've got noise cancelling headphones on. They're probably trying to burrow under the door as we speak.
But yeah, so I've done environmental science. I worked in agricultural science for a little bit. I've done infectious disease research. I've done...
That's so cool. Zombie outbreak. You've done zombie research. That's what
Well,
you've
it was
done.
during the pandemic, so that was wild.
Excellent.
So yeah, I
Not
did
excellent.
some
Pandemic was
infectious
really
disease.
serious, and I hope everyone's okay. I just mean
Yeah,
the science
sorry,
is
yeah.
excellent. Okay, internet. All right, settle down.
I also did the water chemistry for an aquarium for a while. Currently, I am in the medical industry doing metals analysis on various medical devices before they go on market, making sure they're all safe and good for the human body, so you're not getting, lead or whatnot.
Yeah. To name one of a few things. See, that's
Yeah.
brilliant. I love whenever there's a sciencey question that sort of pops up around my family. They tend to go ask ask me. What do I think about it? And I might know the answer, or I'll just Google it. But I love hanging out with someone who just genuinely knows more science than me. That's very exciting for me. To be like, I can ask him all the sciencey questions, which I think I did.
am more than happy to talk about literally anything. So it's like,
Great.
I always like when I'm hanging out in your Twitch chat, like I will jump at the opportunity when somebody asks something remotely sciencey. I'll be like, "Ooh, all right."
Yeah. Oh, I did because I had this YouTube video out recently, and I was showing it to my partner, and she's a nurse. And I made the comment about, "We'll try and eat some of these seagulls," and she's like, you can't eat seagulls. It's not going to work. Game over." I'm like, "It's just a game. Don't ruin it." Dungeons and Dragons. You play Dungeons and Dragons. Tell me what it's like.
Well, when we actually get to play, because I'm sure you've probably seen the memes that scheduling is, of course, the final boss of all tabletop RPGs.
I've heard, yeah.
When we actually get to play, it's amazing. So I have been... I got into Dungeons and Dragons, like 7 years ago, like in like my freshman year of college. I don't. You guys don't use freshman year in Australia.
I don't know what that means. Yeah.
No, my first year of college, I guess.
Great. I don't know what feet are either as a form of measurement. But
no one does. It's fine.
When does water boil in America? Like, what's up with that?
Oh, I use Celsius. I'm a scientist. It's yeah.
So you're literally okay. Whatever I learned at school. I don't know. Right? Zeros. Tens,
no, I entirely use metric or Kelvin. It's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Love that. I love it. Even you
I work with a lot of labs over in Ireland as well. So
right. If you give them stuff in
if we use
freedom
metric.
units, they don't know what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
Neither do half of Americans, so it's fine.
Oh. Okay. Good. Well, I feel better. Being insensitive, not knowing. So I've had a discussion with a few people over the years. And don't get me wrong, I have an idea of what Dungeons and Dragons is. Of course, if you Google what is Dungeons and Dragons, you get several cartoons from over the years, different movies from over the years, books, video games based on books, like little games for your phone. Rarely, when you look up Dungeons and Dragons, do you actually get board game. And then in a few times you meet people and they're like, hey, I play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, cool, man. How do you get involved? What's really Dungeons and Dragons all about? And they're like, so I'm a gnome paladin, but my parents, they were fairies. And let me tell you about this journey I went on. And it goes on for like half an hour. And it's like, so what is Dungeons and Dragons? I'm less certain now than what I was before. Is it like a gnome simulator?
It can be. It definitely can be.
So take someone who's got no concept. And you've got, I don't know, 1,000 words to just go, what is Dungeons and Dragons for people if there's anyone watching this that's not aware, because it's going to probably have Dungeons and Dragons in the title, what is Dungeons and Dragons?
That's a fantastic question, because it can be anything from a gnome simulator to a psychological horror, So, as someone who runs a lot of Dungeons and Dragons things, I will usually just be like, if it's something, it's usually based on something that I find interesting. So I'll be like, oh, hey, I found this cool-looking... Yeah, I'll be like, oh, I found this cool-looking monster in the monster manual or on like one of these random books. I want to do something with it just because I think it's cool. So that's generally my formula if I'm running like something short. Is I'll be like, here's a fun monster. How can it terrorize a town or something like that? And then I'll like plop the party in with like usually like a vague kind of description. Like I'll be like, oh, this is going to be a murder mystery. Oh, this is going to be a paranormal investigation. Oh no, this is going to be like you have to figure out what's going on in the town. Most of my things is my kind of genre that I tend to run most things in is either kind of like mystery or horror. There's also plenty of random wacky silliness that I can also run. I have a reoccurring character. His name is Mangon the Wannabe Wizard from the Caves of Zorath, who is just a little goblin with a gigantic wizard hat with a coconut staff, who really thinks he's a powerful wizard, but all he can do is bake rhubarb pies. It can really be anything.
Follows.
Yeah.
Right. So let me see if my terminology's up to date.
Yes.
The person who sort of plots the game out, they're kind of like an NPC. They don't actively play with their own characters, and they're the dungeon master. Is that correct?
Yeah. So like the person who's like running the story, kind of making sure, kind of like, not necessarily who you're up against, but who kind of like either like runs the scenario or creates the story and kind of like guides the players through it, to whatever degree of improvisation the campaign requires. But yeah, so that's the dungeon master. And I mean, in some people, they do, if it's like a smaller game, sometimes they have their own character that they kind of play or something like that as well. It very depends on kind of who's the dungeon master and stuff like that, and not everyone's dungeon master style is the same. It's basically just, yeah, you're a storyteller, and you wanted to add shiny click clack math rocks into your story to see how it goes.
Sure. I spoke to one guy I used to work with who did a lot of D&D, and he would say you would spend maybe a week after work going and spending a bit of time working on a world, setting up a scenario, and the things that will unfold from the scenario, and like you get the princess in the tower, and then like all this other stuff, and it was all puppet masters in the background. You make this big elaborate dungeon, only to have like you've dumped all the characters at the beginning, and you're in a village, and the cottage is on fire, and they're going to go and investigate the cottage, and everything's going to be like kick off from there, only for the players to go, hey, what's that over there? And then the dungeon master just has to work it out, and their entire beautiful, beautiful epic just gets completely derailed because they're like, no, fuck the dungeon master and the clear plot device. I'm going this way. What's over here? And then you just have to make it all up on the fly.
No matter how much time you put into planning and world building and stuff like that, your players are going to think of things you never would have considered in a million years. And I think that's fantastic.
I love that.
Because it's like, all right, here's a little sandbox I built. Let's put all these people in it and see what they do.
Do they ever get mad with your plot devices? Like you've made something wonderful, and they just all want to go over here, and you're like, the characters came up against an invisible wall that they couldn't penetrate no matter what, and they had to turn around and go back to the burning cottage. Does that happen?
So there are definitely times where I'm like, okay, they are so far off track, I don't foresee them ever getting back on the main quest line, so I will try and kind of like keep adding in little like hints or like things like that to try and kind of guide them back on the course. Not very often do I just straight up be like, oh, you hit an invisible wall, you can't progress that way. Or at least if I do need to do something like that, I'd really try and make it make sense in the world, because I don't want to feel like my players to feel like they have no agency in the world. I still want it to be, this is a world I created, but it's still their story. And kind of I want them to be able to kind of explore it the way they want to do. And as long as everyone's having fun, that's the main goal. Sure. Even if they're my story was over here and they're like, woo, it's as long as everyone's having fun, perfect. In my book,
Great.
Anyways.
Yeah. So at its core, you would say Dungeons and Dragons is a board game, which is a storytelling device in which you've got a scenario, but depending on what the players do, can completely just write their own story, and it can get as ridiculous or be up against as many guardrails kind of as you want.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's like usually you have like a general kind of story in mind, or if you have like a pre-written like module or something that you're running, you generally have like a general idea of the path forward and kind of like what events need to happen. But I mean, you also need to make sure that it kind of fits what your players are doing and kind of how they're actually playing. Because if they're like, dear God, we're the most serious players ever, we're gonna do only the most serious things, or they're gonna be like, old man Bob the Goblin really needs a new pair of pants. They're like, it can be anything. So it's like, depending on how they're playing, I kind of try and change how I kind of introduce the main plot points. So they're still getting all the plot points and kind of directing them on their way, but it makes more sense with how they're playing. Because if I'm running like something really serious or something and they're like very wacky, I'll try and still like kind of match their energy, but like still be like, all right, here's the serious thing that we're still kind of, it's still happening in the background, you know.
I love board games. As you can see, I have several, and I've got more over there and whatnot. There's a real diversity in board games. I remember growing up as a kid, to me, the mindset of a board game was like Monopoly or Scrabble. And then I kind of started going to school and meeting people playing Warhammer and that sort of stuff. Some of them, Mansions of Madness, you actually run it with an app on your phone at the same time, which helps keep the plot going and also adds sound effects and that sort of stuff, which is cool.
Yeah.
Can be a bit overwhelming for new players. We've only ever played it ever so briefly because it's got 2 books that you need to read before playing, and the second book you keep with you whilst playing the whole time. The first book's just context for everything. How hard is it to get into Dungeons and Dragons? Is there a noob server I can join? I'm assuming most places in the Western world, at least, are going to have some sort of accessible kind of community events. Is it hard to pick up for the first time? If you didn't know anyone that played Dungeons and Dragons and you just wanted to go, I want to give it a go, how hard is it to pick up as a brand new player knowing nothing?
So I will say, I think maybe I'm way off base, but at least all of the people who I've talked to that are into Dungeons and Dragons are the friendliest people in the world. So, and they will talk for hours about their interest in Dungeons and Dragons. So if you so much as mention Dungeons and Dragons in their vicinity, they'll probably try and talk to you about it, and they'll depending on who they'll invite you to a campaign or something like that, and it's like, yeah, it just happens. So at least where I am, we have like board game cafes and stuff like that where you sit down. You have access to like a giant board game library. You buy some coffee and some snacks and things like that, and you can just sit down and play whatever you want. They'll do like, oh, if you're new to D&D, come on Tuesday or whatever, and we'll run you through like a basic thing and kind of go through kind of like the ins and outs. And then if you wanted to join a campaign from there, we'll be like, oh, well, we've got, Bob's got one going on Thursdays, ask him or something like that. So it's usually a pretty welcoming community, I'd say. I mean, there's definitely bad cases and everything like that. I haven't really had any bad experiences in D&D. That might just be because I'm primarily the one running the D&D. I'm not a player as often, so that could also.
What is a bad experience with D&D? Is it like we all have to go to this guy's cabin in the woods in his basement to play in D&D, and it's really creepy? Or is it just Dungeon Master rage quit because we weren't following their story and they threw the board at us?
I mean, honestly, it can be kind of anything in between. It can be like, yeah, I mean, it can be like, oh, this dude's actually a creep. Or it can be like the actual physical person is just like not it. Or it can be like the person running it is, it's just you don't vibe with whatever story they're telling or how they're telling it. I mean, it can also be like, oh, this person who's like a player just absolutely just does not get along with everybody else, and just kind of making the whole experience miserable. At least in my experience, the whole point of playing D&D is just so people can you can get together with a bunch of friends and just kind of have a fun time. So if you're not kind of getting the base, everyone's enjoying themselves, then I mean, you need to fix something. But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
So the problems.
Step 1, have a good time. Step 2, play D&D.
Exactly. Yeah. Step 1, hang out with people you enjoy hanging out with. Step 2, introduce them slowly into a fantasy realm of dragons and gnomes and things. And slowly they'll become very invested in their one little gnome guy. What
makes a great game of D&D? What makes you go, that was such a great night, really glad I took a few hours out to spend time with the... What's the collective noun for Dungeons and Dragons players? People, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. Dead. Honestly, we can just make one up. Dungeons and Dragoners.
Nerds.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're probably. It is D&D actually.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is like a proper.
What is the collective noun for D&D players? Here we go. I'll go straight to Reddit. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on, everybody. What have we got? straight up is just nerds.
You know,
Yeah, maybe.
I walked into that one.
Used in a sentence. Me and my friends are nerds. We play Dungeons and Dragons every Tuesday after work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
well. So I remember quite a long time ago now playing The Sims, the first one. I don't know what they're up to anymore, like 10? It's probably
Something
an
like
MMO these days. It's been that long. All games eventually become an MMO. And I used to get really upset because if you didn't socialize your Sims, they became manic depressive, like chronically depressed. And at the time, I worked in customer service, so I was just talking to thousands of people every week, and I just wanted to chill out and sit on my computer and close the curtains and close the door and not talk to anyone for 5 to 10 hours and just play video games. And I couldn't wrap my head around why do the Sims become depressed when they don't talk to anybody. So for the kind of nerd that I am, and that I imagine most people that will come to watch this are, you know, it's people that can like to isolate while gaming, which, again, when you've got a day job, I kind of get it. You want to chill out and, you know, being an advocate for healthy gaming, you know, don't Dota and drive. Every loot box is doing you damage, that sort of thing. How important do you think it is to socialize healthily while gaming? And now, I don't mean like I play online and get called a virgin by a 9-year-old, but to just genuinely, yeah, I'm going to play games. I'm going to do the fictional fantasy stuff that helps me decompress and do it with other people. Whether it's online like this, I imagine you can play Dungeons and Dragons in a setting like this, or physically around a table with a couple of beers and a board game. How important do you think that is for people?
You know, everyone's mental health is vastly different, everything like that. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons can definitely be a fantastic form of escapism and just kind of like a quick respite from the stress of everyday things. And I think it's fantastic for that. You get to invest like entirely in somebody else, like a fictional character's problems in a fictional world.
Did your cat just rage quit?
A little bit.
What just happened?
Little bit. But I mean, you get to invest in you can just kind of like leave your problems behind temporarily and like just invest fully in something else that you're completely immersed in, which I think is fantastic. If you know, it can become a problem if you're trying to use D&D as a substitute for something like therapy. Because
sure, yeah.
You don't necessarily need to bring all of your actual real-world problems and dump that on all of your friends and people you just met playing around a tabletop.
Yeah. It's like I came here to be a paladin, not an emotional support device.
Yeah, so like it can be phenomenal, but like it can also be like, all right, a little bit too much of real things are kind of like bleeding into this, and it's like you definitely want to put, you know, some of you into like your world and your characters and stuff like that, but it can become kind of a problem if you're dumping all of your actual kind of trauma into it.
If
like,
the only socializing you do is
yeah, because like
sure.
we're fantasy nerds, we're not licensed therapists. So
yeah, right. That's the thing. Yeah, you gotta get out and about to some professionals sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean it can be very therapeutic, and I mean if you have nothing else, it can definitely be great. But you know, it's not a substitute for actual therapy. All right, my cat is just having a time right now.
I remember being very young, and I can only equate it to what currently young people would call Hogwarts, because I was born before Harry Potter was written. And I remember walking into a Games Workshop store, and there was many a neckbeard, and a lot of BO, and people playing with dice that went higher than 6, and I didn't understand. And there's people playing Magic the Gathering in the corner, and I don't even know what they're talking about anymore. Do you think approaching D&D, you know, I think it's part of why I want to do all this is again the advocacy for gaming responsibly. Nerds have valid mental health as well. I think they just have slightly higher proclivities to sitting alone in their rooms and just playing video games, and suddenly they're 40 and they're like, oh shit, I meant to get my life together. And they might feel pretty average on that, which I think we've all done. We've all walked out of off our computers 3 days later and gone, oh my god, what just happened? And I thought, I just played video games for like, the game came out 4 days ago and I've got 80 hours in.
Oh, don't even get me started when Baldur's Gate 3 came out. You couldn't find me. I was just gone.
Where is he? He might be the computer. We're not sure.
Sorry, my voice was dying real quick. Give me 1 second. Just
Oh, good man. We can just edit it out. It's all
yeah,
it's
perfect.
great.
I've got my chemistry cup. I just really I gotta sell my brand as a scientist.
Yeah.
I'm like,
No, I love it. It's
I'm just like, people, please talk to me about
well
science.
because you hear someone like, hey, I'm a scientist and I got a PhD in like some cool science, and I know a lot of Latin, and then you get chatting to them and they're just really boring people. And you are how I want scientists to be. Like, you're not just,
Fantastic.
I have a PhD. Do it. Like, I fucking love science. Like, look at all the science I've got. I've got science on my cup. I have a T-shirt that has, it's the compound illustration of caffeine on it. And I wore it out one time just visiting some family. And everyone's just like, hey, what does that say on your T-shirt? I'm like, oh, hey, it's caffeine. And you're like, yeah, cool. I'm like, yeah, it is cool. And I just spent the rest of the night being, no, yeah, it's caffeine. Yeah, what, yeah, no, caffeine. Yeah, it's caffeine. Like, everyone would, yeah, no, it's caffeine. It's caffeine, all right? Cool. I'm glad everyone's really enjoying the science.
See, I'm the opposite, where I'll see someone wearing a caffeine shirt. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your caffeine shirt. And they're like, oh, you knew it was caffeine. And I'm like, yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing. I just thought it was a cool picture. And you're like, oh. I found out the other day adding salt to water increases the boiling temperature. I've been lied to my entire life.
I always thought you added the salt to flavor the pasta.
Yeah, right. It's I don't think anybody knows anymore. Right?
Honestly, you're probably right. It's just
right?
one of those urban myths that's been passed down.
Yeah, we started it at some point. It probably, when you live in a world with very little salt, let's go like England 400 years ago, though they literally had salt mines. Let's say England before spices turned up from around the world. So you don't have any cinnamon. You've got very little pepper, if any. You've got some salt, and that's about it. I'm just going to add it to everything. But people would always say, it lowers the boiling point. It doesn't. It actually increases it. They've lied to us. They've lied to us all. I'm going to look it up again. Why do we add salt to fucking hell, I'm not the only one. Look, I'm pretty sure when we first started doing it, we didn't do it because it limits starch gelation and also reduces cooking losses and stickiness. That sounds like a bullshit reason to add salt to pasta. Like, it's not like we're going to change the nature of, like, the water. It limits starch gelation?
Yes, I'm assuming
like
it helps stop the pasta from sticking
chains?
together, is what it's trying to
Getting
say.
derailed. Gelation, gel transition, is a formation of gel forms.
Oh, am I back?
And we're back.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
Sorry. My internet was just like, no, we're
Yeah,
done.
so it's like, is he still fucking talking about pasta water? I'm out of here.
This is like, all right, I'm sick of this pasta gelation stuff. I'm out.
This isn't even
You
science.
mentioned polymers, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah, not interested in that part of chemistry. But what other games do you play? What other tabletop games do you play, if any?
So Dungeons and Dragons is primarily the one that I run things in, and I probably play the most consistently. But there's also a bunch of I mentioned like the board game cafes and stuff like that. Me and my partner have been going to them every now and then, and they do what's called the random RPG nights and stuff like that, where it's literally just like they'll run a one shot in like a small like 1-page RPG. So we've played ones called like A Familiar Problem, which is where you are literally playing as the familiar of like a wizard or a witch, and you are definitely helping them. You are being very helpful to whatever the wizard or witch's goal is. And you are definitely not just causing chaos, you are being very helpful. We had a little party of little animals who were trying to find this item our wizard had lost. Little did we know it was actually a cursed artifact that he got rid of for good reason. So we went off to find this cursed artifact to bring it back to our wizard to help. It was, yeah. So like there's a bunch of random ones like
that's
that.
What it's,
yeah, basically. Yeah.
Great.
Pirate Borg, which is based off of Morkborg, which apparently is a system that I am not very familiar with. But it's a very kind of like unforgiving system where it's like, oh yeah, your character is gonna die, but it's like,
But you can just start again.
But I'm just playing a very kind of crusty pirate trying to fight eldritch horrors,
Cool.
as one does. And then there's just like a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons is primarily the one I play. I also play a lot of random little mini ones that are just like usually like quick and more kind of one-shotty. I've been wanting to get into Call of Cthulhu. I bought some of the books.
Oh yeah.
I haven't ran anything in it yet. But I'm a big kind of fan of like the cosmic horror kind of genre.
Yeah. Well, that's very much Mansions of Madness is very much Lovecraft. I mean, it's pretty much a giveaway. You open the box.
Yeah.
It's like Rainy Hill Mansion, and you've got the actual figurines of little Cthulhu's and underwater monsters. Yeah. Which is brilliant stuff. I've got some of Lovecraft's work around, and he kind of became like he's the A grade. He's the bar for just creepy, scary stuff.
You can separate the art from the artist a little bit. And
Yeah, like what are ocean monsters? Yeah, okay, I'm cool with it. I don't have any strong feelings. Yeah, underwater monsters, they send you crazy. Don't go to mountains in Antarctica or something.
No, because I like a lot of the stuff that he created as well, kind of like essentially like the genre he kind of spawned into existence. I think is phenomenal. Like the whole kind of cosmic horror, Cthulhu, all that kind of stuff. I just find it fascinating. But
I know we've got Pandemic there. Which we played years ago before the pandemic. I remember we played it.
Right, I wonder if game sales fell off for them.
Probably did. Yeah. Or I know there's that video game which is like you make a disease and you try and conquer the world, and it's great fun.
Oh yeah, Plague Inc.
Plague Inc. That's the one. Lots of fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. I have it on my iPad. And I think they actually started donating to actually like helping research and stuff. They're like, yeah, pandemics aren't actually a game. We feel bad this is happening, and we're donating lots of money to help out. But I know with Pandemic, the board game, we misunderstood the rules when we first started playing. So it's all co-op. You have to travel around the world with your pieces, find clues and whatnot to slow down the progression of the disease. And we misread it, and we didn't realise until maybe 10 games in, because they can be really quick games, so a lot of fun, that we were making the game about 5 times harder for ourselves than it really was.
Yeah.
We just didn't read it right, and there was quite a few mechanics going on to start with, so we thought we had it under control, and then we reread it again, we're like, hang on. And we'd accidentally like forged ourselves into these amazing players, because when we played it with just the normal rules, we're like, we're just crushing this over and over again, where before we're like, oh, we nearly won that one. It's like, no, you made it way... Like, you're using 2 extra dice. Don't do that. The game's not that hard.
Right, yeah. Like, oh, you're actually spawning, like, 4 more little plague tokens or whatever than you needed. Yeah,
that's it. Way harder than it needed to be.
That's always kind of interesting when you misread the rules, and then it can spawn some interesting house rules and things like that, which I always just kind of find fun. Everyone kind of has their own little quirks with a lot of various board games, especially, like, really complicated board games. If you're not, like, super into, like... really reading rules, a lot of you can just get some really fun little house rules, be like, nah, not a huge fan of that one, I'm going to implement this, and then it's just like...
Yeah, like mortgages, Monopoly. Everyone does them slightly differently. Yeah.
Exactly,
As you say, especially when they're extra complicated, and maybe you play with the same sort of 3 or 4 people, and so it's this kind of agreement. No, we just don't do it, especially if you all sort of discovered the game for the first time together, and then maybe you bring someone else in, and they're like, oh yeah, I love that game, and then they're like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not how you play this game at all.
Yeah. Oh, I've definitely had that with like a lot of games where somebody who actually knows how to play the game will come in and be like, "Wait, you do it that way?" And I'm like, "What do you mean I do it that way? I thought that was the way you're supposed to do it." And they're like, "Actually," and they'll go and reread the rules, and I'm like, "Oh, you're really right. I read this so wrong."
I read it wrong, but with like 100 other things, and I didn't understand. Favorite conspiracy theory, right?
Ooh, okay.
Because I thought, what's a good couple of things that everyone can start to expect? You know, I love the idea of probing around and probing around, and getting a creepy story out of someone. Like, oh, I went camping and there was this noise and it was like, holy shit. Like, I don't want to be like the Joe Rogan experience, but I love a good story. That's why we're all here. And you're not allowed to use the Australia isn't real conspiracy theory, because that's mine.
I've never heard that. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Australia's not real. We're all actors.
I would assume, since I'm talking to someone from Australia, that it is real, unless like y'all are really good at pulling a fast one over the entire world.
No, I'm gonna Google it up quickly right now. There's people out there convinced. It's like, how many people here didn't know that Australia isn't real? Does Australia exist? It's on radio stations. It's someone. They're making T-shirts out of it. We're not real, because if the Earth's flat, right, and then they're going to give you they're going to give you all the reasons of like planes only go in these directions, and of course everyone's like,
right, yeah.
so why does it take so long to get to Australia? And like, no, Australia's not real. I was like, no, I'm pretty sure we are real. And like, really? Well, how come they didn't believe the platypus was a real animal when they brought it back to England? And it was just like, they thought it was a duck sewn onto like a mole, sewn onto like a fish. Like you're going to have a monotreme? Like, what the hell's a monotreme? I'm like, well, like, it has poisonous barbs, and it lays eggs, and it swims, but it lives on land, and, alright, it has a pouch, okay? It's how it feeds. Like, settle down.
It's just a funky little guy.
Yeah,
come on.
right? So,
Like...
so Australia's not real. I mean, yeah, you've got chemtrails. I used to love...
So, I actually have a funny story about
please.
chemtrails.
You're very excited. Let's do it.
So, just to mess with people at some point... So this was me and some friends in college. We never actually started this, but this was an idea that we had just to mess with people, because we all thought chemtrails was such a stupid idea. So we're like, all right, we want to just plaster posters around like the nearest city and around like their little college town and stuff like that, saying, like advertising chemtrails. And what we wanted chemtrails to be was a chemistry-themed hiking group. So, you know, we just wanted to, like, oh, yeah, come on a hike and we'll tell you some fun chemistry facts, and we wanted to call it chemtrails.
Oh, that's excellent. And then people come out with their tinfoil hats, and they're all like, this is what
exactly.
they don't want you to know. And you're like, no, man,
like,
we're going to just walk up this hill.
Yeah. I was like, oh, they're actually spraying the 5G from the planes, and it's like, actually... Here's some cool chemistry facts about this rock or something. It's like
he's a geologist. He's going to tell you all about it. Oh, good.
But I will say we never actually started our chemtrails group. So, you know, if someone out there wants to start a chemtrails hiking group, feel free, go for it.
I love just how so far like off, like just out of the realm of normality someone can take that they can just hear chemtrail group. And like, that's it. I'm going to get in my truck. I'm going to drive down. And I'm going to be like, what's all this about? We're going to find out about it. And the Men in Black are coming and the whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, chemtrails. All right. Let's...
And it's like, no, actually, we wanted to talk about the boiling point of water and what happens when you add salt and how that affects gelation of pasta.
It's like, just call it like chemtrails secret group. And everyone's like, oh, it must be a secret.
Yeah, the secret meetup for the chemtrails group.
Yeah, because when I run a secret society, I'm going to put posters up around the place.
Oh, yeah, like absolutely. I mean, how else are you going to how else are people going to know you have a secret society if you don't advertise
well, if you
it?
don't tell anyone, where's the point in having a secret? Yeah, that's exactly right.
People have to know they don't know something.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, and like, don't ask silly questions. Like, who are they? You know, they don't want you to know. I remember seeing that on TV, like fun, like ghost stories and UFOs and stuff, which I absolutely loved as a kid. I absolutely loved all that. And about, this is what they don't want you to know. It's like, who's they? No, you're not allowed to ask. All right, like, watched the thing about, I read their books as well, being in cults and stuff, because psychology is interesting to me. And they talk about, you know, different behaviors, difference between cults and religions and things. Basically, is the big one is, can you leave? It's basically you can. Hey, I don't want to go to church next week. All right, buddy. As long as you're all good, we're all good. All right, fine. And hey, I don't want to be a part of this group anymore. All right, buddy. No worries. Hope you're all good. Oh, it's not a cult. Hey, I want to leave. No, you can't leave. Why do you want to leave? Why are you leaving everybody? So, might be a cult. And the number one question they had was ask, is this a cult? Because everyone will say no, but a cult, they're going to say something like, hey, why are you asking? You're supposed to say no, and you're supposed to say no really fast.
I have been called a crazy because I'm a scientist, so it's you know.
Oh right, perpetrator of the lie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I still think one of my favorite things was that I saw somebody some scientist on the internet.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I don't remember what their name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, disclaimer, this was on the internet. But they set up like a Go or like a PayPal or like a Patreon or something like that, and they're like, if you give me $5, I will tell you the truth about something. So then like all these conspiracy theorists like paid like $5 or whatever to hear the truth. And then she was like actually like delved in. She had like a PhD in the topic and was like, "All right, great. Here's the science backing everything up." And all these people were like, "What? That's not it. Like, what do you mean?" And I'm just like, "That's awesome."
Yeah, I'll tell you the truth about chemtrails. Like, yeah, it's just condensation because that's how air works.
And I'm like, dang, man, I went into the wrong field. I could have been making so much more money if I was just grifting people on the internet.
You just gotta like learn a bit of markup and start a website, and you should do it. Yeah, by all means, that'll work out. Why? Just like if you want to know what happens, when you add salt to pasta water, I'll tell you the truth. Probably 6 easy payments of $2.50. Favorite book? Go.
One of my favorite book series is the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. It is a fantasy series about basically there's like little different like factions of magic and things like that, but all of the factions of magic revolve around a wavelength of light and being able to control a certain wavelength of light, and each wavelength of light was given its own kind of special kind of like subgenre of magic that only this wavelength of light can do. And
are we talking about 5G again? It sounds like the 5G conversation.
Yeah, so you had 5G, and
and they were wizards.
And you had one person who was sort of like the kind of like god king of this land, who was called the Prism, who could use all of the different wavelengths of light. And was kind of like this all-powerful being. But I still think that's one of just the world building that Brent Weeks does, and like stuff like that. I love it. I love his world build. What about you? What's your favorite?
It's hard for me because my brain.
Yeah, let me just flip that back on the interviewer here.
Whose podcast is this? Look, there's an Australian author called Garth Nix, who I really really liked. He did like teen fiction. He. From his writing elements that I really enjoyed, he was really good at building a world that felt very deep and that it would have a lot of lore and left a lot of wiggle room for things to be explained, but was really good at kind of going, because of these little mechanisms I've used, I don't have to explain it to you. I know with especially some of the sci-fi I read a series called The Amtrak Wars, and you would get lost from time to time. They would just go on a couple of paragraphs on just fleshing out the world, which did help. But you're like, you left me on a cliffhanger, you did really well, I just want to know what the character's doing. I don't give a shit what the texture of the grass is on the hill, even though they're doing a really good job. I got into Sandman Slim a few years ago, and that's about a character who magic exists. It kind of thinks Supernatural, the TV show. Magic exists in the world and some people can do it. This particular dude's good at doing it, but the start of the story is he's literally just got out of hell, but he's had to like break out of hell, and kind of his silly antics all done with in a very sort of lowbrow comedy sort of way, that he's got these eldritch artifacts from heaven and hell, and he's first trying to find the person that killed his girlfriend, and then he's trying to find the people that killed him. And it's all set to like, it tells you the songs he's listening to when he's in his car and that sort of thing, and it's all set to like an 80s soundtrack. And so that's a lot of good fun there too. Current favorite video game? Go.
I think my favorite video game of all time is Dishonored.
Excellent.
That's like one of the first like that is the first game I bought all of the DLC for.
They were cool DLC. I'll be honest, especially Dishonored 1. They had the puzzle puzzle maps where it was just like playing with the physics engine, and I'm gonna go and play it tomorrow, like flat out. Yeah.
But I still really love Dishonored and kind of like that whole system. I love the fact that I could do the entire thing without actually having to kill anybody. I can just completely do the entire game without actually doing like any murder, and I'm like, that's fantastic that you can either go through, murder everybody, you can murder a couple people, or you can murder no one. And I'm like, that's awesome, and you get different endings. You even get a different ending if you throw, I think her name's Emily, off the building at the end. It's like, yeah.
Fuck, can you throw her off the building? Oh, it's like the one bit I never did. I've been meaning to go back and actually try and get all those achievements. How did you find Dishonored 2?
I didn't like it as much, actually. I'm not entirely sure. Like I never actually finished Dishonored 2.
No, that I've tried a few times. I get to the big golden door, and I think I'm annoyed that it's not quite different enough, which is a weird thing because usually the issue with a sequel is it's completely fucking different. And I just felt it was a little ham on, your choices have consequences, which is just like the first one, and that's totally fine. But like I know for a fact that I can either work out the puzzle myself, or I can go different ways. And I think one of the things that upsets me is it's far less clear when you are or are not in a restricted area, where they're like, yeah, just go and talk to these guards. I'm like, but every time guards see me, they try to kill me. I don't know if I should do that. It just, I don't know. I'm with you on that. I can't quite articulate why.
Yeah, see, that's another thing is I couldn't exactly point to what made it a worse game. It's just something was off. While I was playing it, and maybe it was just because like I played the first one years ago, and I just have like a sort of almost nostalgia around the first one. But it's just like something about it. It just didn't hit as hard as the first one did.
Yeah. The magic system was very cool though, because it's.
Oh yeah.
Although you get achievements for not using any magic at all, and that's one of the playthroughs I've never done. It plays like the levels are like sort of the FPS games we used to get. Like it reminds me of like Quake in a weird way and Doom in a weird way. It's those kind of maps around the corners. You could jump and shoot the people and whatnot, but I've kind of got this magic that is basically just letting me clip the map. Like that's how it feels. I'm gonna sneak up the wall. I'm gonna teleport over there, and then they snuck in multiple ways to finish levels. I loved that. It was like you can literally just go in through the front door if you want to, if you're going to fight everyone, or there's a sneaky window, or there's an even more sneaky way that you didn't know about until the 10th time you played through the game.
Right, yeah, it's like, oh, actually, if you talked to this person and then bribed this person and then did this specific thing here, it unlocked the underground passage or whatever, and I'm like, hell, I still think one of my favorite things that I actually, going back to like the RPG thing, that I stole from Dishonored, and that I use in a lot of my RPGs, is the Masquerade Ball from Dishonored.
I fucking love that level. Yeah.
That is one of my favorite levels of all time, and in like most of my like long-running campaigns, I will find some excuse to make my players in their characters go to a masquerade ball somehow to like either sneak into something or try and get information or have something happen at a masquerade ball, because I still think that is like one of my favorite levels of all time in video games.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. For me, it would be that particular quest, because they're all for those who've never played, which I'll B-roll the hell out of it. I'll go and play that level specifically to cut it into the podcast. You've got the sort of the upper class bourgeoisie that have lied and cheated and imprisoned you. You've broken out. You've got magic powers, and you've gone there specifically to find someone and kill them. And whilst there, because it's a masquerade ball, nobody knows who you are because you've got this permanent creepy ass mask on the whole game.
Yeah.
And you can sign your name in the guest book. And then kill the person and leave, and it's one of the notes at the end of the map that they're like, oh, they knew you were there because you fucking signed your name. The next one up that I really enjoyed, I didn't enjoy Oblivion, so Elder Scrolls 4. I did not enjoy Oblivion as much as I enjoyed Morrowind or Skyrim. I think Morrowind just because it was an absolute mind-blowing experience of how much detail and effort you can put into a video game.
Yeah.
Because it's janky as hell, but it was just still fairly unbelievable in the writing. But I suppose the two things I really loved about Oblivion were all the quests, the writing for all the actual quests, and just the fictional element to it was pretty amazing. And the vampires. They built the vampires properly. Now, I'm a massive Elder Scrolls nerd, so don't even get me started. Like, I'm worse than a D&D player. But there's a quest for the Dark Brotherhood where you need to go into a mansion and kill everybody. And all the people have been invited by kind of the puppet master, so they all get killed. And you turn up, and right at the start, someone asks, hey, why are you here? And you say, I'm here to kill all of you. And they laugh.
You're a funny one. Good, I'm glad one of us has a sense of humour about all this. It'll make our time here that much more enjoyable.
That was just... That was brilliant. I love that as a quest line. Thought that was absolutely fantastic. let me check my life choices and check. So I've got Elder Scrolls Skyrim with 534 and a half hours, but then we've got Skyrim Special Edition. Fucking hell. With 1,207 hours. Like, I remember the day it came out. I remember just being so thrilled. I remember... Like, what? It's like a religious experience, which is ridiculous, and I love video games so much that I've made a podcast about them.
Hell yeah.
It's still ridiculous. I remember what I was doing. I remember what the weather was like. I remember downloading it like 3 hours beforehand, because if you'd already bought it, you could download it in advance, and it releases on midnight. I'm like, I'm going to play this game like an adult with a full-time job. It has to go to work tomorrow. I'm going to get out of bed at midnight to go play this fucking game.
Yeah.
And it's not like they keep re-releasing it. A friend of mine played it recently for the first time on the Switch. I'm like, how old is this game now? Like 15 years old?
Well, yeah, they keep re-releasing it on everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be on the Samsung fridge next.
Yeah,
like,
that's,
you know.
why not? I remember, I think the way you play Skyrim is the way I played Morrowind. I think I finished the story once. And by the time I did, I had that game memorized. Like, I'd have my opening moves, I'd go and I don't remember the names of the places, but like, I'd go to basically the main town, was it Balmora? I'd steal. I would steal some of the armor I needed, then I'd go like the really far north of the map and get a dagger that's enchanted with paralyze, so that you don't need to be amazing at fighting, you just keep stabbing really quickly. I actually picked up, because it's free, Arena and Daggerfall, so Elder Scrolls 1 and 2, they're almost impossible to play. Like, I'm going to need to actually find a manual, because I'm trying to play it and I'm getting attacked. I'm still going to do it, because I'm a nerd and that's what we do. But I liked, I think the big thing with Morrowind, there was such a storytelling element to it. Like, you didn't get, like, you don't get a marker on the map. In Skyrim, you get a marker and it turns up. And I think Oblivion was the same. And it is actually helpful, because it gets frustrating as hell when it's like, I have to actually read the description that somebody told me in Morrowind. They're like, you follow the path, you go to the sign, you go left, and then you walk off into the motor bit, and then you find a thing. I have to remember that, because it's not in my quest. I have to literally remember what he told me.
Back when you had to like actually like physically have a notepad for your games and be like, all right, what's all my garbage that I have to remember?
Oh, like Myst and Riven. If you've never played them, give them a go. They're nostalgic as hell. Top of their class for the almost never done point-and-click adventure. I remember watching this, how long ago it was, watching my mum and my brother actually play it together, and it came with a book. And the book was, it's the walkthrough, but it's the walkthrough told as a story. You're literally reading someone's journal, and even then they struggled with the puzzles. And I remember a few years later, like 10 years later, getting the game myself and working it all out myself, and I was like, this is amazing. And then playing Riven and how that was a really enjoyable kind of storytelling where no one literally tells you anything about the world, but you find bits and pieces of the research and studying they're doing. So if you've never played, which again, B-roll, so it'll be cool, there's areas which are like roller coasters, but they go underwater, and there's these big like red hot rings, and the water moves out the way, and you go, I don't know why, I don't even necessarily care, but it's very strange. And then you can, if you go looking, you find a little laboratory where he's got a Bunsen burner, and you light it, and all the water moves to the top, and the Bunsen burner goes out, and all the water moves to the bottom. You read the notes, and he's like, there's parasites in the water that don't like heat, and they bond with the liquid, and so they just move out the way. I'm like, what a fun way to tell that story. What's your favourite Dungeons and Dragons campaign? I thought we should tee back on to Dungeons and Dragons while we're talking about games.
Absolutely. Not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but I made my own kind of world map that I've since kind of edited over the years and everything like that. But most of my campaigns take place somewhere within this world map, and there's other bits that have been added on since this is an old drawing of it. But
oh my god, it's like it's like a canvas. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, cool.
Well, I'm not going to try and put that back up right now, but I think one of my favorite campaigns I've ran is I basically took my world map and I kind of just broke it. So I like taking things that are familiar and just kind of breaking them.
Yeah.
It makes people uneasy.
No, 100%. It's one of my favorite video games of all time for its creepiness, which I didn't own. It was on the GameCube. It's called Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem. And in fairness, if I had a GameCube, I wouldn't have ever really played the game. It's just too creepy to go, I'm going to sit in the dark by myself and play, but a friend owned it. And I would go and stay at his place a lot in the good old high school days where it's like, yeah, just go to my friend's house and play video games. And we got a real thing of like trying to get through this game. Very creepy game and did very well. It had like sanity mechanics and like the screen would tilt and freak you out and the game would pretend it was turning itself down and then yell at you after you've turned it up. It was brilliant. It just, as you say, take the commonplace and mess with it. Favorite horror film?
My favorite horror film? I'm not a huge fan of a lot of horror movies, because I feel like a lot of them, at least a lot of the ones that I've seen, because I don't really go out of my way to like look into like movies and stuff like that. So a lot of the ones I see are more like kind of like the mainstream horror ones.
You mean
those
shit
ones are,
is just what you're trying to say. Yeah,
exactly. That's the problem. Is because I don't go out of my way to like search for like the really good movies that are like probably like really weirdly obscure and kind of hard to find. The horror movies that I've seen are like kind of the more mainstream ones that are just like, oh, here's a jump scare that's really well telegraphed.
Yeah, sure.
And stuff like that.
The foreshadowing's got fucking lights on it. You're like, there's gonna be something there. Wait for the violin music.
It's like, oh, hey, pay attention to this window or whatever. There's gonna be a thing. So I'm not sure I have a favorite, really like a horror movie. I will say one of the horror-y things I watched somewhat recently was Guillermo del Toro did one on Netflix called The Cabinet of Curiosities.
Well, mate.
Oh, Midnight Mass, which is the kind of one. I really enjoyed that one. I thought that was
a really interesting way to not to spoil it for anyone who should definitely go and watch it.
You should.
To set up this scenario of what is like I don't want to give it away too much, but it's your supernatural enemy. I thought that was a really interesting way to tell a story that's a trope that's not only been done to death but also ruined in pop culture over the years. Yeah, I thought I really enjoyed that one as well. Well, gosh darn it, buddy! I think we might wrap it up, unless you got any super exciting Dungeons and Dragons stuff left. Thanks so much for coming to the first episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate being on. Anytime you want to talk about random stuff.